The Blair Witch Project sparked a revolution in the found footage horror movie genre, but there are other found footage films that beat the 1990s classic. Though it wasn't the first movie to dabble with found footage, The Blair Project was certainly the film that launched the concept into the mainstream. The low-budget film became an international sensation thanks to viral marketing that utilized the fledgling internet to spread the word and grow the movie's mythos. It didn't take long for other filmmakers to jump on the found footage bandwagon, and the genre grew in the 2000s. Since 1999, other movies have been able to improve upon found footage horror. There's no denying that The Blair Witch Project is a quintessential piece of 1990s cinema, but the film itself is overshadowed by its production and marketing. Though found footage is itself a gimmick of sorts, other found footage horror movies rely less on novelty and deliver a coherent cinematic experience. The Taking of Deborah Logan, 2014. Found footage naturally lends itself to creativity, and The Taking of Deborah Logan is a perfect extension of the genre's main concept. A student's thesis film involves her recording the daily life of a woman with Alzheimer's disease, only to discover something sinister is happening. Every moment builds upon itself, and the indie horror gem embraces horror. One big issue with The Blair Witch Project is its vague conclusion, which is a bit disappointing. The Taking of Deborah Logan doesn't have that problem and instead commits to a shocking ending that, while a bit overstated, is at least unique. Every second of the film is jam-packed, and that comes from an abundance of ideas, not a dearth. The Sacrament, 2013. Loosely based on the real-life events of Jonestown, The Sacrament continued T. West's rise as a new voice in horror. Investigators travel to a mysterious religious commune and are met with suspicion and violence from its leader. Methodical and deliberate with its pace, The Sacrament uses its shocking moments sparingly but effectively. Plenty of films have been made about Jonestown, but The Sacrament is the only one to capture the abject horror of the event. While it isn't as original as The Blair Witch Project, its execution benefits from more than a decade of improvement in the found footage genre. T. West's other horror films proved that The Sacrament was no fluke. The Bay, 2012. Accomplished director Barry Levinson tried his hand at the found footage genre, and The Bay was the finished result. The film centers on a remote seaside town that is besieged by a mysterious illness that comes from their polluted water supply. While The Bay certainly follows the found footage formula, it breaks away from it as well with gruesome scares. The Blair Witch Project leans heavily on gimmicks and subterfuge, but The Bay goes for the gusto from the very beginning. While the found footage aspect is a bit contrived, it is never a distraction that takes away from the legitimately scary eco-horror story. The Bay is a surprisingly unique film in a genre known for its sameness. Rec. 2007. It took a while for other filmmakers to jump on the found footage train after the Blair Witch Project, and Rec was one of the earliest examples. The Spanish film concerns a TV host who gets trapped in an apartment building during a zombie outbreak. Combing two overplayed horror subgenres, Rec deftly blends the tropes of both. Besides delivering genuine scares, Rec also shines because of its gritty realism. Most films struggle to blur fact and fiction like the Blair Witch Project, but Rec actually does it better. It improves upon its predecessor because its payoffs are legitimately harrowing, and the gimmick of found footage isn't used as an excuse to skimp out on the horror. Creep, 2014. Mumblecore mainstay Mark Duplass had his hands all over Creep, and the found footage film is an unorthodox horror comedy. A filmmaker agrees to help a dying man film a video for his unborn son, only for things to take weird and dark turns. The horror comes from the movie's creepy situation, but the humor comes from its unabashed absurdity. Unlike the Blair Witch Project, which is earnest, but not very complex, Creep is a multi-layered dissection of genre and a complete upending of found footage and comedy. Despite this, it manages to be pretty frightening at times, mostly because of the unhinged performance of Duplass. It's no wonder that Creep became a horror franchise. VHS, 2012. Just as the found footage gimmick was hitting its breaking point, VHS arrived to make it fun once again. The anthology film concerns thieves who are dispatched to steal a tape, only to discover dozens of tapes each with odd things on them. With multiple visions throughout the film, VHS isn't limited in the way it delivers its scares. While earlier found footage films like the Blair Witch Project were just about the footage, VHS is also about the discovery of said footage. This adds depth to the narrative, as the mystery surrounding the tapes is as important as the tapes themselves. Besides all that, VHS is a fun and fast-paced romp that features a wide variety of chills. Lake Mungo, 2008. The Blair Witch Project offered a new approach to horror through found footage, and Lake Mungo took up the banner and ran with it. Following the death of their daughter, a family begins to reconstruct events through found footage and documentary segments. Underneath everything is the horror of grief, and Lake Mungo is a powerful meditation on the subject. It isn't a straightforward found footage horror movie, but it beats the Blair Witch Project in its effective use of tension. Both films could be considered disappointing for horror fans looking for something bombastic, but Lake Mungo chills much deeper despite being just as ethereal. Both are atmospheric, but the latter has something to say. The Visit, 2015. Director M. Night Shyamalan has been a controversial figure in horror for decades, and The Visit is no less divisive. Two kids are sent to stay with their estranged grandparents, but soon find that nothing is as it seems. Complete with his signature twist, The Visit is very much an M. Night Shyamalan film. Though the found footage aspect is incredibly contrived, it helps to narrow the focus and make the movie's absurd scares seem more realistic. It harkens back to the unfiltered horror of older decades, and eschews the earnest approach of the Blair Witch Project. While not as scary, The Visit has a lot more rewatch value than its predecessor. Paranormal Activity, 2007. Though the Blair Witch Project is responsible for blowing the lid off the found footage genre, Paranormal Activity is responsible for its explosion in the early 2010s. A couple moves into a new house and begins filming what they believe to be supernatural occurrences. Utilizing viral marketing, the film scared audiences before they had even seen it. Both movies represent an important shift in the horror landscape, and both came at a time when consumer cameras were becoming more accessible. Both also rely heavily on suspense, though Paranormal Activity actually gives the audience a payoff. The Paranormal Activity sequels went off the rails, but the original is still an effective thrill ride. As Above, So Below, 2014. As Above, So Below was absolutely lambasted by critics, but it remains one of the found footage genre's best films by far. A treasure hunter delves into the catacombs below Paris only to find a hellscape waiting for her and her crew. The found footage framework actually adds